So the logic we gave you here on Mark Rogers TV was that Minnesota lost 4 games in the Big Ten to the likes of Wisconsin, Penn State on the road in overtime, Nebraska, and Iowa. None of those teams beat them by more than one score. One score losses 4 times for Minnesota in what might be the best conference in college football. I will say it's the top half best conference in college football. So how is Washington State going to beat Minnesota by more than 9 points? So we said take Minnesota and the points. And the Golden Gophers win it over to Washington State 17-12. Yes, there were suspensions, which meant then Minnesota was missing a starting safety in Antoine Winfield Jr., missing 3 cornerbacks who worked into the rotation nicely and had substantial playing time and numbers. And we backed that up during our preview section, and also a punt and kickoff returner. Yes. And then we learned before the game they were missing their starting center, which may have led to 6 false start penalties. Still, Minnesota played physical Big Ten football. They did what they do best. They punched Washington State in the mouth. They were the more physical, imposing football team, and they won the Holiday Bowl to finish at 9-4. So Washington State gets the football on the first drive, goes 17 plays for 76 yards. Minnesota gets the benefit of an illegal block on a touchdown, what would have been a touchdown play by Washington State, and they hold Luke Falk to a field goal. But Washington State had Minnesota on the run, had them on their heels, moving the ball all over the place, and moved it down the field effectively. We didn't know that Minnesota was going to shut them down basically to the last 10 seconds of the game after that. Falk hit on 30 of 51 passes, but just for 264 yards. And after his 14 for 17 start, he only hit on 16 of 34. This coming from a guy that completes more than 70% of his passes. We talked about the glossy statistics in our preview that Washington State is not only one of the top 3 passing offenses in the country, that they had risen to the top of the charts rushing and defending the run in the Pac-12. But on this night, it was Minnesota getting the job done. The secondary was phenomenal. Guys like Jalen Myrick, who we've seen play for a number of years at Minnesota. Also, of course, Demario Tavares, both seniors playing in their final game at the Holiday Bowl, played lights out, breaking up passes, intimidating wide receivers, playing physical against the run. The top 3 rushers for Washington State came in with gaudy, glossy stats, and Gerard Wicks, also Jamal Morrow, and James Williams, 14 carries for 51 yards. As with the sacks included, Washington State had 23 attempts in running the football for 39 yards. So it was a 6-3 Washington State lead at half, because despite what Minnesota was able to accomplish, not just defensively, but in the kicking game, the punting was exceptional on both sides, continually being pinned back and completely flipping the field a number of times. And so that helped out the Minnesota defense as well. Minnesota couldn't do anything offensively. They were one-dimensional, as they typically are at times. Mitch Leidner coming in with 7 touchdowns and 12 interceptions, and they couldn't move the ball. It was 6-3. He was 2 for 9 for 20 yards in the first half. But Minnesota got more aggressive. They went off the play action, and specifically on a couple scoring drives in the second half. They got Rashad Still involved. He had 2 catches for 38 yards. Drew Wolotarski, their tight end and leading receiver, was big in the second half with 5 catches for 73 yards, and Minnesota broke out to the 10-6 lead, courtesy of the defensive back number 27 Pippins for Washington State. So they ran the wheel route with Shannon Brooks, and the ball was overthrown, and Pippins popped it up in the air, and Shannon Brooks said, "Thank you very much." 10-6 lead for Minnesota, and the Gophers defense took it from there. There was a true freshman cornerback in Corey Durr, who was expected to have significant playing time to start the season, but he hurt his ankle, didn't play a down the entire regular season as a true freshman. Had to play in this game against one of the more prolific passing offenses in college football, and he stood up to the test. He did hurt his leg late in the game and had to leave the game, as did Stephen Richardson, one of the better defensive linemen in the Big Ten. who had to leave the game, and Minnesota was even more depleted in the second half defensively, and it seemed like the more players they lost, the better they played against Washington State on offense. Wazoo got the ball at its own 18. They had a 23-yard swing pass to C.J. Dimry down 10-6 late with 4.5 minutes left. They had a 4th and 6, but in what could have been a pick six, but Adekinle Ayinde ran out of bounds at the Washington State 31. Still, Minnesota took it in from there. And you talk about some tough running. The last scoring drive for Minnesota that extended the lead to 17-6 and put the game away. Rodney Smith would not be denied. Ran for first downs when the Wazoo defense knew Minnesota was going to run. There was less than 3 minutes on the clock. They were salting the game away. They loaded the box, and they could not stop Minnesota's ground attack. Rodney Smith, 17 for 74. Shannon Brooks chipped in 13 carries for 51 yards. Minnesota wins at 17-12. They lose a ton of senior talent and experience from this team and face 2017 with a game on the road at Corvallis against Oregon State as their big non-conference game. And for the Washington State Cougars in 2017, we look ahead with Luke Falk coming back, not going to the NFL draft, back for his senior season. Washington State's big out-of-conference game against Boise State in September. Need to hear from you now on Mark Rogers TV.